The dream always begins the same way. Shara's scales gleam like molten copper in the dying light. Her wing torn and bleeding drapes across the scorched earth. And Kael is running, always running. His boots pound against stone that's still hot from dragonfire. His lungs burning with smoke and something worse, the acrid taste of his own doubt. "I'm here," he gasps, dropping to his knees beside her massive head. "I'm here, girl. But her eye, that golden eye that once reflected his soul back to him with perfect clarity, shows him something else now. Recognition, pain, and underneath it all, a question he cannot bear to answer. "Did you believe in me?" His hand trembles against her scales. They're cooling too fast. The bond between them, that sacred thread of trust forged over 7 years, frays with each shallow breath she takes. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I'm so sorry. I should have." The dream fractures. Ashera's eye clouds over. And in that moment, Kael feels it. The bond doesn't just break, it shatters. Every piece of it lodges in his chest like glass, and he knows with terrible certainty that this isn't death. This is abandonment. This is the consequence of one single moment when he looked at his dragon, his partner, his other half, and hesitated. Kael wakes with his hand already reaching for a sword that isn't there. The tavern room is gray with pre-dawn light. His shirt clings to his skin, drenched in sweat that has nothing to do with the temperature. For a moment, he stays perfectly still, relearning how to breathe in a world where Ashara isn't. 3 years. It's been 3 years since the Battle of Crimson Vale. 3 years since he stood in a field of ash and felt a part of himself die that no healer could touch. He forces himself out of bed. The routine is mechanical now. Splash water on his face, strap on armor that's seen too many battles. Check his weapon sword, 2 daggers, and the small crossbow he keeps for emergencies. He avoids the mirror. He knows what he'll see there, a ghost wearing his face. The common room downstairs is empty except for the tavern keeper, a grizzled woman named Marta, who's learned not to ask questions. "Bread and coffee," Kael says, sliding 2 copper coins across the bar. "Job boards, got fresh postings?" Marta nods toward the far wall. "Caravan guard to the eastern provinces. 3 weeks' work." Kael doesn't look. Long jobs mean connections. Connections mean people asking about his past, wondering why a man his age travels alone, why he flinches when he sees riders in formation overhead, those lucky few who still have their dragons. "I'll think about it." He lies. The bread is stale. The coffee is bitter. Everything tastes like ash anyway. He's halfway through his breakfast when the door opens and someone sits down across from him without invitation. Kael's hand moves to his knife hilt before his brain catches up with his eyes. The woman across from him is young, mid-20s perhaps, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid and eyes that are simultaneously exhausted and determined. She wears scholar's robes, but they're travel-stained and patched at the elbows. There's ink on her fingers and what looks like dragon scales in a vial around her neck. "You're Kael Theron," she says. Not a question. He takes another sip of coffee, buying time. "Don't know who you're talking about." "Former dragon rider of the Northern Legion, bonded with Ashara of the Copper Flight, served with distinction until the Battle of Crimson Vale, where," she stops and something that might be sympathy flickers across her face, "where you lost your dragon." "I'm sorry." Kael sets down his cup with deliberate care. His voice is flat, empty. "You have 10 seconds to tell me what you want before I walk out that door." "I need a guide to Dragon's Peak." "Hire someone else." "There is no one else." She leans forward, urgent now. "Every guide I've approached has refused. They say the mountains are cursed, that all the wild dragons have vanished, that people who go looking for them don't come back." "Then maybe you should listen to them." "My brother is dying." The words hang in the air between them. Kael wants to stand up, wants to leave, wants to tell her that people die every day and it's not his problem. But something in her voice, that raw edge of desperation he knows too well, keeps him in his seat. "I'm a scholar of ancient dragon magic," she continues. "My name is Liana Morse. 3 months ago, my brother Finn started turning to stone. It's a curse, the stone sleep. I've researched every text, every remedy, and there's only one cure. Dragon's breath. Not the fire, the actual breath. The essence of life from a living dragon." Dragon's breath can't be harvested from wild dragons, Kael says automatically. They're too dangerous, too unpredictable. I know, that's why I need you. You know dragons. You can read their behavior, anticipate their movements. You're my only chance. Kael studies her face. There are dark circles under her eyes. Her hands folded on the table bear small scars, the kind you get from working with sharp quills and ancient parchment late into the night. This isn't a woman on a casual quest. This is someone who's already exhausted every other option. I don't work with dragons anymore, he says. I'm not asking you to bond with one in, just help me find one. Help me get close enough to... You don't understand. His voice is harder now. I can't be near dragons, not anymore. Find someone else. He stands. Liana stands too, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm offering 200 gold crowns. Kael pauses. Half now, she says quickly. Half when we return. I know it's dangerous. I know I'm asking a lot. But I've spent the last 3 months watching my 15-year-old brother forget his own name. Watching him stand perfectly still for hours because moving hurts too much. I've read accounts of this curse. In the final stages, the afflicted remain conscious. They can still think, still feel, but they're trapped in their own body. A living tomb. Her voice cracks just slightly. So yes, I'm desperate. And yes, I'll pay whatever it takes. But mostly, I'm just asking one person who understands loss to help me prevent another. Kael doesn't turn around. 200 gold crowns. That's enough to disappear for a year, maybe longer. Enough to find some quiet corner of the world where no one knows his name or his shame. Enough to keep running. 300, he says. What? If you want me to risk my life walking into dragon territory, it's 300 gold, and you cover all supplies. There's a pause. Then done. Against his better judgment, against every instinct that's kept him alive these past 3 years, Hale turns back to face her. We leave at dawn tomorrow. Pack light, no servants, no guards. Just you, me, and whatever you can carry on your back. Dragon's Peak is 2 weeks north through hostile territory. If we're lucky, we'll only encounter bandits and wild animals. If we're unlucky, the dragons, Liana finishes. No. Kael's expression is grim. If we're unlucky, we'll actually find one. The next morning arrives wrapped in fog. Kael waits by the northern gate with 2 horses and a pack mule. He's been up since before first light, checking and rechecking supplies. Rope, climbing gear, medical herbs, weapons, everything except what he actually needs, the instinctive connection to dragonkind that he severed 3 years ago. Liana arrives just as the sun breaches the horizon. She's accompanied by a younger boy, thin and pale, who moves with a strange halting stiffness. Finn. Even from a distance, Kael can see it. The grayish tint to the boy's skin. The way his left arm hangs at his side, not quite paralyzed but not quite fluid either. The careful, measured way he breathes as if his lungs are already starting to solidify. This is my brother, Liana says unnecessarily. He wanted to say goodbye. Finn looks up at Kael with eyes that are still bright, still aware. You're going to save me, he says. It's not a question or even a request, just a simple statement of fact that carries the weight of absolute faith. Kael doesn't know what to say to that. He settles for a curt nod. Finn's staying with our landlady, Liana explains, adjusting the pack on her shoulders. She's a retired healer. She'll make sure he's comfortable while we're gone. Liana. Finn grabs his sister's hand with his good one. You have to come back. I will, I promise. No, the boy's voice is urgent. You have to come back before the new moon. That's when he stops, swallows hard. That's when I won't remember you anymore. Liana's composure finally cracks. She pulls her brother into a fierce embrace, and Kael looks away, giving them what privacy he can. When she finally climbs onto her horse, her eyes are dry but red-rimmed. They ride in silence for the first hour. The road north is well-traveled at first, passing through farms and small villages where smoke rises from morning cooking fires. But gradually the landscape changes. Fewer houses, wilder terrain, the mountains in the distance grow larger, their peaks still crowned with snow despite the season. How long have you been a scholar? Kael asks, more to break the silence than from genuine curiosity. Since I was 12, my father was a dragon lore historian. He taught me to read ancient texts before I could properly write. She pauses. He died 5 years ago. Some kind of wasting sickness. He was convinced it had something to do with his research, but the healer said it was natural causes. And your mother? Died when Finn was born. It's been just the two of us for a long time. They ride on. The sun climbs higher, burning off the morning fog. Around midday, they stop to rest the horses by a stream. Liana pulls out a leather-bound journal and begins sketching the landscape, making notes in the margins. What are you doing? Kael asks. Recording the journey. If something happens to me, maybe someone else can use this information to help Finn. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that? No, Kael admits, but I know how to survive. And as long as you follow my instructions exactly, we both walk away from this. Liana looks at him for a long moment. You don't have to pretend you care. I don't care, Kael says bluntly, but I don't let people die on my watch if I can help it. It's bad for business. It's a lie, but it's one he's told himself so many times it almost feels like truth. They make camp that night in a clearing surrounded by pine trees. Kael builds a small fire while Liana sets up her bedroll with the efficient movements of someone who's done this before. You've traveled rough country, he observes. Academic expeditions. I spent 6 months in the Crimson Wastes studying fire drake migration patterns. Another year in the Frost Peaks documenting Shaya ice dragon hibernation cycles. She pokes at the fire with a stick. Dragons have always fascinated me. The way they're so much more than what people think. Everyone sees monsters or weapons, but there's such complexity there. Such intelligence. Kael doesn't respond. He's staring into the flames, seeing another fire from 3 years ago. Seeing Ashara's wings silhouetted against the smoke. I'm sorry, Liana says quietly. About your dragon. I can't imagine. Don't. The word comes out harsher than he intends. You don't know anything about it. You're right, I don't. She's quiet for a moment. But I know what it's like to be helpless. To watch someone you love suffering and not be able to stop it. I know what it's like to wake up every morning wondering if today's the day you lose them. Despite himself, Kael looks at her. In the firelight, she looks younger, more vulnerable. But there's steel underneath. The kind of strength that comes from refusing to break, no matter how much weight the world piles on your shoulders. Get some sleep, he says gruffly. I'll take first watch. The next week passes in a rhythm of travel and silence. They move north following old traders' routes that wind through increasingly rugged terrain. Kael watches the sky constantly, but sees no dragons, no scouts, no wild flights, just empty blue stretching overhead. It's wrong. Even with the wild dragons being notoriously territorial, there should be some sign of them. A shadow passing over the sun, claw marks on trees, the charred remains of a hunting kill. Nothing. On the 8th day, they encounter their first real obstacle. The bridge across Silverthroat Gorge is out, not collapsed from age or weather, destroyed deliberately. The support ropes are cut clean, the wooden planks thrown into the ravine below. Someone doesn't want people crossing, Liana says, peering over the edge. Kael studies the cuts in the rope. This was done recently, within the past week. Can we go around? Not without adding 10 days to our journey. He looks upstream. There's a narrower point about 3 miles east. We can cross there, but it'll be dangerous. They find the crossing point just before dusk. It's exactly as Kael remembered from maps, a natural rock bridge barely 6 feet wide spanning the gorge. Far below, a river churns white against black stone. We'll cross in the morning, Kael decides. Better visibility. They make camp well back from the edge. As Liana prepares a simple meal of dried meat and hard bread, Kael notices her hands are shaking. Afraid of heights, he asks. Afraid of falling, she corrects. There's a difference. That night, Kael dreams of Ashara again, but this time the dream is different. She's not dying, she's flying, soaring through clouds with the sun on her wings. And she's looking back at him with those golden eyes waiting for him to follow. But he can't. His feet are rooted to the ground, and no matter how hard he tries, he cannot make himself leave the earth. He wakes to find Liana sitting by the fire, her journal open in her lap. Couldn't sleep, he asks. Finn's been in my dreams, calling for me. She closes the journal. I keep thinking, what if we're too late? What if the curse progresses faster than expected? Then we move faster. You say that like it's simple. It is simple. You want to save your brother, so we do whatever it takes. Kael adds another log to the fire. Complications come from overthinking, from doubting. Is that what happened with your dragon? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Kael could deflect, could shut down the conversation the way he has countless times before. But something about the pre-dawn darkness, about the way Lyanna asks, without judgment, only curiosity loosens something in his chest. There was a moment, he says slowly, during the battle. Ashura wanted to dive into the enemy formation. It was risky, dangerous. And I hesitated just for a second. I thought maybe there was a better angle, a safer approach. That doesn't sound unreasonable. Dragons don't bond with the reasonable. They bond with the ones who trust completely, who leap without looking because they know their dragon will catch them. His jaw tightens. That hesitation, Ashura felt it through the bond, and it broke something between us. By the time I realized my mistake, by the time I committed to the dive, it was too late. She took a lance meant for me, or died protecting a rider who didn't trust her. Lyanna is quiet for a long moment. Then, did she blame you? I don't know. She died before I could ask. But you blame yourself. Every day. They sit in silence as the sky gradually lightens. Finally, Lyanna speaks again. My father used to say that trust isn't about never doubting. It's about choosing to believe even when doubt exists. She looks at Kael. Maybe Ashura didn't die because you hesitated. Maybe she died because she knew you would make the right choice eventually. And protecting you was how she showed she still trusted you even in that moment. Kael wants to argue, wants to explain all the ways she's wrong. But the words stick in his throat, tangled up with 3 years of grief he's never properly processed. We should cross now, he says instead, before the wind picks up. The crossing takes 2 hours of careful, agonizing progress. Kael goes first, testing each step, aware of Lyanna following close behind. The rock is slick in places, treacherous with loose stones. One wrong step, and there's nothing but a 100-foot drop to razor-sharp rocks below. They're halfway across when Lyanna's foot slips. She gasps, arms windmilling, and Kael moves on pure instinct. His hand shoots out, catches her wrist, pulls her back to stability. For a moment, they're pressed together on the narrow bridge, both breathing hard. I've got you, Kael says. Lyanna nods, composing herself. Thank you. They complete the crossing without further incident, but something has shifted between them. Some invisible wall has developed the first crack. The terrain beyond the gorge is different, wilder. Ancient pine forests give way to volcanic rock fields and scattered obsidian formations. The air tastes different too, charged with something Kael recognizes from his years as a rider. Dragon magic. They're getting close. On the 12th day, they see the first body. It's a man, or what's left of one. He's sprawled at the base of a cliff neck, bent at an impossible angle. His clothes mark him as a hunter, leather armor, reinforced with chainmail crossbow still strapped to his back. Lyanna dismounts, moving to examine the corpse. He's been dead less than a week. Kael's eyes scan the cliff face above. There are scorch marks on the rock. Dragon fire. He was hunting. How can you tell? The crossbow bolts. They're tipped with ironwood, one of the few materials that can pierce dragon scales. He points to the man's pack. And that's a capture kit. Net guns, sedatives, binding chains. Why would anyone hunt dragons? The penalty for killing one is death. Not if you don't get caught. And there are people who pay good money for dragon parts. Scales for armor, blood for potions, hearts for... He stops, jaw clenching. There's a black market for everything. They ride on, but the encounter casts a shadow over the rest of the day. Kael finds himself constantly scanning the skies, but still sees nothing. The absence of dragons is becoming eerie. That night, they camp in the ruins of an ancient watchtower. The stone walls provide some shelter from the wind, which has grown colder as they've climbed into the mountains. Tell me about Finn, Kael says, surprising himself. What's he like before the curse? Lyanna's face softens. Brilliant, annoyingly brilliant. He could read ancient dragon script by the time he was 10. He has this way of seeing patterns in things that others miss. She smiles. And he's funny. He does these impressions of stuffy academics that used to make our father laugh until he cried. He sounds like a good kid. He is. He deserves better than this. Better than a curse he didn't earn in a body that's betraying him. How did he get cursed? You said it started 3 months ago. Liana hesitates and Kael sees something pass across her face. Guilt. We were cataloging our father's papers. Finn found a hidden compartment in one of his trunks. Inside was an egg, a dragon egg preserved in amber. Kael goes very still. Your father stole a dragon egg. I think so. There was a journal with it. Notes about an expedition to the northern wastes 20 years ago. He wrote about finding an abandoned nest, taking one egg for research purposes. Her voice is bitter now. When Finn touched the amber, it cracked. Not much, just a hairline fracture. But that's when the curse started. Dragon eggs are sacred, Kael says quietly. Taking one is it's one of the greatest taboos. The mother would have placed a protective curse on it. Blood magic. The kind that only activates if someone with ill intent touches it. Finn had no ill intent. He was just curious. But your father did, and his blood runs in Finn's veins. Kael runs a hand through his hair. That's why you need dragon's breath. It's not just a cure, it's forgiveness. You need a dragon to willingly give its essence to break a curse placed by another dragon. Will they give it willingly? I don't know. I've never heard of anyone trying. He meets her eyes. You should have told me this from the start. Would you have come if I had? Kael doesn't answer because they both know the truth. He would have walked away, would have told himself it wasn't his problem, would have added it to the list of things he's running from. We're committed now, he says finally, but when we find a dragon, if we find one, don't expect mercy. They hold grudges, sometimes for generations. That night, Kael lies awake, staring at the stars through gaps in the tower roof. He thinks about Ashara, about trust and doubt, about the fine line between caution and cowardice. He thinks about a 15-year-old boy turning to stone for a crime his father committed. And despite himself, despite 3 years of carefully cultivated indifference, he finds that he cares about whether Finn lives or dies. It terrifies him. They reach Dragon's Peak on the 14th day. The mountain rises from the landscape like a claw, its summit wreathed in perpetual clouds. The lower slopes are littered with volcanic vents that leak sulfurous steam. This is old dragon territory. Kael can feel it in his bones. We'll make base camp here, he says, dismounting in a sheltered valley. The peak itself is too exposed. We'll do reconnaissance on foot. They spend what's left of the day setting up camp and preparing for the climb. As the sun sets, painting the mountain in shades of blood orange and gold, Liana pulls out a small device from her pack. What's that? Kael asks. A resonance detector. I built it based on ancient texts. Dragon magic has a specific frequency. If there are any dragons nearby, this should pick up the vibration. She activates it, and immediately the device begins to hum, its crystal core glowing faint blue. It's working, she breathes. There's definitely dragon magic here. Strong, very strong. They both look up at the peak where darkness is gathering like a cloak. Tomorrow, Kael says, we climb at dawn. But sleep doesn't come easily that night. Kael lies in his bedroll, listening to the wind howl through the valley, and feels something he hasn't felt in 3 years. The faint ghostly echo of a dragon's presence. It should comfort him. Instead, it makes his chest tight with a grief so sharp it steals his breath. I'm not ready for this. But ready or not, tomorrow they'll climb. Tomorrow they'll find out if any dragons remain. And tomorrow, Kael will have to face the one thing he's been running from since Crimson Vale. The possibility of connection, the risk of loss, the terrifying hope that maybe, just maybe, he can be trusted with something precious again. Dawn breaks gray and cold. Kael wakes to find Liana already up, checking and rechecking her equipment. Her resonance detector is attached to her belt, still humming softly. They eat a quick breakfast of dried fruit and hard cheese, then begin the climb. The path up the mountain is treacherous. Loose scree gives way beneath their boots, and more than once they have to navigate around thermal vents that belch superheated steam. But Kael moves with the confidence of someone who's spent years in dragon territory, and Liana follows his lead without complaint. By midday, they're above the cloud line. The air is thinner here, harder to breathe. The resonance detector's hum has grown louder, more insistent. We're close, Liana says, very close. They round an outcropping of rock and stop dead. Before them lies a vast amphitheater of stone, a natural crater that must have been formed by some ancient eruption. And scattered across the crater floor, or first floor, are bodies. Dragons. At least 20 of them, maybe more. Their massive corpses lie twisted in broken scales, dull wings torn. Some look like they've been dead for months. Others are more recent. "Oh gods," Liana whispers. "What happened here?" Kael moves forward slowly, examining the carnage. His trained eye picks out details, scorch marks from dragonfire, but also puncture wounds from weapons. Crossbow bolts still embedded in scales. The unmistakable signs of a massacre. "Hunters," he says, voice hard. "A coordinated attack. They must have found the dragon's gathering place and ambushed them. But why kill so many?" Before Kael can answer, there's a sound from the far side of the crater, a low, pained keen that raises every hair on his neck. Something's still alive. They move quickly but cautiously across the crater. The sound grows louder, more desperate, and then they see it. Wedged between two boulders barely visible beneath a pile of larger dragons, who died protecting it, is a young dragon. It's small, maybe 10 feet from nose to tail, with scales that shimmer like pearls in the dim light. One wing is bent at a wrong angle. Blood almost black pools beneath its body, but its eyes, those bright, intelligent eyes that lock onto Kael with desperate hope. "It's barely more than a hatchling," Liana breathes. "Maybe 2 years old at most." The young dragon tries to move, whimpering with pain. Kael feels something crack open in his chest. That sound, he knows that sound. Ashera made it once when she took an arrow to save him during their first real battle. "Kael," Liana's voice is uncertain. "What do we do? What do we do?" As if the answer isn't written across the dragon's face, as if there's any choice at all. "We help it," Kael hears himself say. He approaches slowly, hands out, making himself as non-threatening as possible. The young dragon watches him with eyes that are clouding with shock and pain. "Easy," Kael murmurs, falling back into old patterns, old training. "Easy, little one. I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon's nostrils flare, scenting him. And then something remarkable happens. Its eyes widen with recognition. Rider. The word doesn't come in sound. It comes in feeling and understanding that blooms directly in Kael's mind. The bond he realizes with shock. The dragon is trying to establish a bond. "No," Kael says, pulling back. "No, I can't." But the dragon isn't listening. Its mind reaches for his with desperate insistence, and Kael feels the bond start to form, that sacred connection he swore he'd never feel again. Panic floods through him. He takes another step back, shaking his head. "I can't do this. I can't." "Kael," Liana's hand on his arm steadying. "It's dying. If we don't do something, then let it The words burst out of him, raw and terrible. "Let it die before I fail it too." The young dragon makes another sound. Not pain this time. Something else. Something that sounds almost like understanding. And in that moment, Kael sees it clearly, his choice. He can walk away, can let his fear win, can add another death to the weight he already carries. Or he can try. His hand is shaking as he reaches out again. This time when he touches the dragon's scales, he doesn't fight the bond. He lets it form that delicate thread of trust and connection, and it feels like coming home and drowning all at once. "You're safe," he sends through the bond. "I've got you." The dragon's response is immediate, flooding him with relief and pain and desperate need. "Help me move these bodies," Kael says to Liana, his voice rough. "Carefully. We need to get it free." They work together, shifting the massive corpses that protected the young dragon in death. It takes nearly an hour, and by the end, both of them are exhausted. But finally, the young dragon is free. Its wing is definitely broken. There are deep lacerations along its left flank. But it's alive. Kael has Liana prepare bandages, while he uses his water skin to clean the wounds. The dragon lies still under his hands, trusting in a way that makes his throat tight. "What's its name?" Liana asks. Kael closes his eyes, reaching through the bond. There's a flash of color of pearl and moonlight, of the sound of waves on a distant shore. "Seren," he says softly. "Her name is Seren." As he works, Kael feels the bond strengthen, weaving itself into his mind in patterns he had thought lost forever. And with it comes Seren's memories, flashes of the attack. Men with crossbows appearing from nowhere. Dragons falling from the sky. Her mother's last act throwing herself over Saren's small body to shield her from the final volley. And underneath it all, a question that mirrors the one Ashara asked in his dreams. Will you stay? Kael looks into Saren's eyes and makes a choice. I'll stay, he whispers. I promise. The sun is setting by the time they've done all they can. Saren's wing is splinted, her wounds bandaged. She's weak from blood loss, but stable. They fashion a rough shelter from fallen rocks, building a fire at its mouth to provide warmth. She needs to heal before we can move her, Kael says. It'll be at least a week, maybe two. But Finn, Liana starts. I know. Kael cuts her off, not unkindly. But if we try to move Saren now, she'll die. And we need her alive for the dragon's breath. What he doesn't say is that even with Saren's willing cooperation, he has no idea if a dragon this young can produce the essence they need. Dragon's breath is typically given by mature dragons at the peak of their power, but one crisis at a time. That night, Kael sits watch while Liana sleeps. Saren lies beside the fire, her breathing shallow but steady. Every few minutes, Kael feels her reach through the bond, checking that he's still there. And each time he sends back reassurance. I'm here. I won't leave you. It's a promise he's not sure he can keep. But looking at this young dragon who survived a massacre, who chose to trust him despite every reason not to, Kael knows he has to try. The sky above is vast and star-filled. Somewhere up there, Ashara's spirit soars free of the pain that defined her last moments. And down here, a new dragon breathes softly in her sleep, trusting a broken man to keep her safe. Kael doesn't know if he deserves this second chance, but he's going to fight like hell, not to waste it. As the fire burns low, Liana stirs awake. She comes to sit beside him, looking at the sleeping dragon. You bonded with her, she says quietly. I felt it. I didn't mean to. It just happened. Are you okay? Kael considers the question. Is he okay? His chest still feels tight with old grief. His hands still shake when he thinks about failing again. But underneath all that is something new. Something that feels almost like hope. I don't know, he admits, but I'm here, that's something. Liana nods. Thank you for saving her, for... She trails off, searching for words. For choosing to treat her. They sit in companionable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. And for the first time in 3 years, Kael feels the faintest stirring of something he'd thought lost forever. Purpose the next morning brings new complications. Kael is checking Saren's bandages when he notices something odd, a mark on her right foreleg, partially hidden under her scales. He carefully pushes them aside and his blood runs cold. It's a brand, small, precise, the symbol of a crowned serpent. Liana sees it too. What is that? The seal of Counselor Darius. Kael's voice is tight. He's the head of the High Council, but he's also... He stops remembering things he'd tried to forget. There were rumors during my time as a rider, whispers that someone on the council was ordering dragon calls, that they feared dragon raiders gaining too much influence. You think he ordered this attack? I think this wasn't random hunters looking for profit. This was an execution. He looks at the dragon corpses scattered around them, and Saren was meant to die with the rest. Liana's face pales. Then we're in danger. If Darius finds out she survived, if he finds out she survived and bonded with a former dragon rider, Kael finishes grimly, we'd be dead before sunset. He stands scanning the crater rim. They're exposed here, vulnerable. And if Darius had hunters organized enough to massacre 20 dragons, he'd definitely have scouts watching for survivors. We need to move, Kael decides, now before they come back to check their work. But you said Saren needs time to heal. And she'll get it, just not here. They spend the next hour fashioning a travois, a makeshift sled that Liana's horse can pull. Getting Saren onto it is an ordeal that leaves the young dragon whimpering with pain and Kael's shirt soaked with sweat. But finally she's secured. Where are we going? Liana asks as they prepare to leave. Kael looks at the mountain peak thinking. There's a place he knows from his days as a rider, a hidden cave system on the western slope that was used as an emergency shelter during the old wars, if it's still intact. Somewhere safe, he says. I hope. They're halfway to the crater's edge when Saren's mind touches his through the bond, urgent and afraid. Coming, they're coming. Kael's hand drops to his sword. How many? Saren sends back an image, 5 men heavily armed, moving up the mountain on foot. Hunters, Kael says to Liana, coming back to check the kill. We need to move. Fast. But fast is impossible with Saren on the travois. The young dragon is dead weight, and the path down is treacherous. They make it maybe 200 yards before Kael hears voices echoing up from below. Should be dead already. Boss wants confirmation before... Shut up and climb. The sooner we check, the sooner we're done. Kael curses under his breath. They're trapped between the hunters below and the crater above. And fighting 5 armed men while protecting an injured dragon and an unarmed scholar isn't a battle he can win. Hide, he tells Liana. Take Saren behind those rocks. Don't make a sound. What about you? I'll handle them. Kael, I've been a mercenary for 3 years. I know how to deal with men like this. He meets her eyes. Trust me. For a moment, he thinks she'll argue, but then she nods and begins pulling the travois toward cover. Kael watches until they're hidden, then positions himself in the center of the path. The hunters appear minutes later. 5 men, as Saren predicted. They wear mismatched armor and carry crossbows, professional killers, trying to look like simple huntsmen. The leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, stops when he sees Kael. You're a long way from anywhere, friend, the man says. His hand rests on his crossbow, casual but ready. What brings you to Dragon's Peak? Hunting, Kael lies smoothly. Heard there might be some action up here. Did you now? The leader glances at his companions. Funny, we haven't seen any other hunters, and we've been here for days. I work alone. That's so. The leader takes a step forward. Then maybe you saw our kills. Big haul, 20 dragons give or take. Boss will pay good money for confirmed numbers. Kael keeps his expression neutral. Impressive. Must have been quite a fight. Not really. Caught him sleeping. Dragons are easy when they think they're safe. The leader's smile doesn't reach his eyes. But we're missing one. Young thing, barely more than a hatchling. You wouldn't have seen it, would you? Just the bodies. The leader studies Kael for a long moment. You know what I think, friend? I think you're lying. I think maybe you found our little leftover and decided to claim the prize yourself. Kael's hand moves to his sword hilt. I think you should walk away while you can. The leader laughs. 5 against 1, I like those odds. Then you're dumber than now, look. The leader's smile vanishes. He raises his crossbow, and Kael moves. 3 years of surviving as a mercenary have honed his reflexes to a razor's edge. His sword clears its sheath in a blur of steel, deflecting the bolt before it can strike. He closes the distance to the leader in 2 strides, his blade finding the gap in the man's armor before the others can react. The leader goes down with a choked gasp. His companions hesitate, a fatal mistake. Kael spins his sword, describing a deadly arc that forces them back. One man raises his crossbow, but Kael's dagger is already flying. It takes the hunter in the throat. 3 left. They're better trained now, spreading out to flank him. Kael backs up, calculating angles and distances. He can take them, but not without risk. Not without a roar splits the air. Saren erupts from her hiding place, moving far faster than an injured dragon should be able to run. Her broken wing drags behind her, but her jaws are open wide, and the gout of flame she breathes is white-hot fury. 2 hunters die screaming. The last one drops his crossbow and runs, disappearing down the mountain path without looking back. In the sudden silence, Kael becomes aware of his racing heart, his heaving breath. He looks at Saren, who's standing protectively between him and the corpses, and feels the bond thrumming with her fierce determination. Protect. Pack protects pack. You shouldn't have done that, Kael says, but there's no anger in his voice. You're hurt. You could have. Saren cuts him off with an image Kael standing alone against 5 enemies. The danger, the possibility of loss. Not again. Won't lose another. The words hit Kael like a physical blow. Saren's memories flood through the bond, her mother's death, her family's death, the terror of being alone. And underneath it all, the desperate fear that Kael might leave her too. He kneels beside the young dragon, pressing his forehead against her scales. I'm not going anywhere, he promises. We're in this together. You and me. Saren's mind wraps around his, and for the first time since Ashara's death, Kael feels complete. Liana emerges from hiding, her face pale but determined. We need to move. Now, before more come. Agreed, Benny. Kael helps Saren back onto the travois, noting with concern how much the fight has cost her. Fresh blood seeps through her bandages. Can you make it? Yes. Must go. Danger. They move as quickly as they can, putting distance between themselves and the massacre. The sun is setting by the time they reach the cave system, Kael remembered. It's smaller than he recalled, half collapsed from some ancient rockfall, but it's defensible and hidden. They make camp deep inside where firelight won't be visible from outside. Kael tends to Saren's wounds while Liana prepares a meal. The young dragon falls asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the fight and flight. She saved us, Liana says quietly. Even injured, she fought for us. Dragons are loyal, Kael replies. Once they bond, they'll die to protect their rider. Is that what happened with Ashara? The question hangs between them. Kael is silent for a long time, staring into the fire. Yes, he finally says. She took a lance meant for me because I hesitated, because I doubted for 1 second, and she paid the price. But she chose to protect you. That wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? The bond goes both ways. My fear, my doubt, she felt all of it, and it got her killed. Liana moves to sit beside him. Kael, I've spent years studying dragons. I've read every account, every legend. And you know what I've learned? Dragons don't bond with perfect people. They bond with people who need them. People who are brave enough to try despite their flaws. Serene doesn't know what she's getting into. Maybe. Or maybe she knows exactly what she's doing. Liana gestures to the sleeping dragon. She survived a massacre, lost everyone she loved, and she still chose to trust you, to bond with you. Don't you think she deserves the chance to make that choice? Kael wants to argue, but the words won't come, because deep down he knows Liana is right. And more than that, he realizes he wants this bond, wants this connection, wants the chance to prove that he can be trusted with something precious. What about Finn? He asks, changing the subject. We still need dragon's breath, but Saren's too young, too weak. I don't know if... We'll figure it out, Liana interrupts. One problem at a time. Right now we need to keep Saren safe and heal her wounds. The rest, we'll handle when we get there. She's trying to sound confident, but Kael can hear the fear underneath. They're running out of time, and with Darius hunting for Saren, their task has become exponentially more dangerous. But looking at the young dragon sleeping peacefully, trusting them completely, despite every reason not to, Kael makes a decision. We'll make it work, he says. Whatever it takes, I won't let either of them down. Liana smiles, and there's something in her expression, gratitude, hope, and maybe something more that makes Kael's chest tighten in a way that has nothing to do with old grief. Thank you, she says softly, for everything. They sit together in comfortable silence, watching over their wounded dragon as the fire burns low and the night deepens around them. And somewhere in the darkness, outside Counselor Darius's hunters regroup, waiting for another chance to finish what they started. The battle is far from over. But for the first time in 3 years, Kael isn't running from it. He's standing his ground. Kael wakes to the sound of Saren's distressed keening. He's on his feet before his mind fully registers consciousness, sword already in hand. But there's no threat, just the young dragon thrashing in her sleep, wings twitching, small cries of pain escaping her throat. Mother, fire, falling. The nightmares flood through their bond, vivid and terrible. Kael sheathes his sword and moves to Saren's side, placing a hand on her neck. You're safe, he murmurs. I'm here. You're safe. Saren's golden eyes snap open, wild with remembered fear. Then she sees him, and the terror slowly recedes. She presses her head against his chest, still trembling. Don't leave. Please don't leave. I won't, Kael promises, and feels the words settle into something deeper than mere speech. A vow, bone deep and binding. Across the cave, Liana sits up, her hair sleep-mussed. Is she okay? Nightmares about the massacre. Kael continues stroking Saren's scales, feeling her gradually relax. Dragons have long memories, trauma. It doesn't fade easily. Liana watches them for a moment, something unreadable in her expression. You understand her, not just through the bond, you really understand. I know what it's like to watch everyone you love die while you survive. The words come out flat, matter of fact. To wake up every day and wonder why you're the one who made it out. There's a long silence. Then Liana rises and comes to sit beside them, her presence quiet but steady. Finn has nightmares too, she says softly, about forgetting. He dreams that he's calling my name but can't remember what I look like. Sometimes I hear him crying through the wall, and there's nothing I can do except sit with him until morning. Kael looks at Ida, really looks. The dark circles under her eyes aren't just from the journey. They're from months of sleepless nights of watching her brother slowly disappear while she searches desperately for a cure. How much time do we have? He asks. Really, 8 days, maybe 10 if we're lucky. Her voice cracks slightly. The last letter I received before we left. Finn's left hand is completely stone now. He can barely write. In his memories, he asked the landlady who Lyanna was, just for a moment before he remembered. But it's starting Kael. He's forgetting me. Saren makes a soft sound, shifting to press against Lyanna's side. Through the bond, Kael feels the dragon's empathy, simple, pure, uncomplicated by human complexity. Just the desire to comfort. Lyanna's hand comes up hesitant, then settles on Saren's head. Thank you, she whispers. They sit like that as dawn slowly filters through the cave entrance, three broken souls offering each other what small comfort they can. The next days fall into a rhythm of survival and healing. Kael hunts for food while Lyanna tends to Saren's wounds and documents everything in her journal. The young dragon heals with the remarkable resilience of her kind, but the broken wing remains a concern. Without proper flight, Saren is vulnerable. On the third day, Lyanna makes a discovery. Kael returns from checking the perimeter to find her surrounded by open books and loose parchment, her face pale. What is it? He asks. I've been researching dragon's breath, trying to understand exactly what we need, how to harvest it safely. She looks up and her eyes are haunted. Kael, I don't think. It's not what I thought. He sits down across from her. Explain. Dragon's breath isn't just a dragon exhaling. It's not their fire or even their physical breath. Her hands shake slightly as she holds up an ancient text. It's their life essence, the core of their being. And according to every source I can find, it can only be given willingly by a dragon at the moment of voluntary sacrifice. The cave suddenly feels too small, too cold. You're saying a dragon has to die, Kael says flatly. Not just die, choose to give their life force willingly to break a curse placed by another dragon. It's the ultimate act of forgiveness, of redemption. Lyanna's voice drops to barely a whisper. I've been asking Saren to kill herself for my brother. Kael looks at the young dragon who's watching them with intelligent eyes. Through the bond, he feels Saren's understanding. She's been following the conversation, grasping the implications. No, Kael says. We'll find another way. There is no other way. I've spent months researching, talked to every healer and scholar I could find. This is it. This is the only cure. Tears stream down Lyanna's face now. But I can't ask this. I can't ask a child to die for my brother. What kind of monster would that make me? Saren stands, moving carefully to avoid jarring her injured wing. She crosses to Lyanna and gently butts her head against the woman's shoulder. Not monster. Love. Trying to save family. The words come through the bond clear enough that even Lyanna seems to sense them. She wraps her arms around Saren's neck and sobs. Kael feels his chest constrict. This is the impossible choice he's been dreading. Save Finn by sacrificing Saren, or save Saren and let Finn turn completely to stone. Either way, someone he's come to care about dies. We have 8 days, he says finally. 8 days to find an alternative. To think of something the scholars missed. We don't give up yet. Lyanna nods, wiping her eyes. You're right. There has to be another way. There has to be. But the hope in her voice sounds hollow even to her own ears. That night, Kael can't sleep. He stands at the cave entrance, watching the stars and thinking about impossible choices. About Ashara taking a lance meant for him. About a 15-year-old boy slowly forgetting his own sister. About a young dragon who's already lost everything. Can't sleep either. He turns to find Lyanna beside him, wrapped in a blanket against the mountain cold. Too much to think about, he says. They stand in silence for a while, looking out at the darkened landscape. Finally, Lyanna speaks. Tell me about Ashara, the good parts, before everything. Kael is surprised by the question. Most people avoid mentioning Ashara around him, afraid of triggering his grief. But maybe that's been the problem. Maybe by never speaking of her, he's kept her death fresh instead of letting it heal. She was magnificent, he begins slowly. Copper scales that caught the light like living fire. When she flew, it was like watching poetry in motion, every movement precise, powerful, graceful. She had this habit of humming when she was content. Not a sound humans could hear, but I felt it through the bond. This deep rumbling vibration that made my whole chest resonate. She sounds beautiful. She was. But more than that, she was brave. Recklessly, stupidly brave sometimes. Kael smiles despite himself. There was this one mission we were supposed to be doing, reconnaissance, nothing more. But Ashara saw a group of civilians trapped by a wildfire. I wanted to wait for backup, but she just dove. Didn't even ask. Just showed me the people through the bond and dove straight into the flames. Oh, honest. Did you save them? All of them. Ashara carried them out 3 at a time while I navigated through the smoke. We were both half dead from smoke inhalation by the end, but everyone lived. He pauses. That was Ashura. She saw people in need and nothing else mattered. Not safety, not protocol, not even self-preservation. She sounds like someone worth bonding with. She was the best of us, Kael says quietly, and I failed her. No, Liana's voice is firm. You made a human mistake in an impossible situation, and she chose to protect you anyway because that's what love does. It protects. Kael looks at her. Really looks. In the starlight, Liana seems younger, more vulnerable, but there's steel underneath. The same quality that made her cross dangerous territory alone to save her brother. The same quality that makes her cry for a dragon she barely knows because she can't stomach the thought of causing more death. What about you, he asks. What was Finn like before? Liana's expression softens. Brilliant. Too brilliant for his own good sometimes. He'd stay up all night reading by candlelight, and I'd find him asleep with his face pressed against some ancient manuscript. He wanted to be a dragon scholar like our father wanted to understand everything about them. He will be, Kael says. We'll find a way. You don't know that? No, but I know I'm not letting a 15-year-old kid die because some bastard on the council decided dragons were too dangerous to live. His jaw sets. And I'm not sacrificing Saren either. There's a third option. We just have to find it. Liana is quiet for a long moment. Then almost shyly, she reaches out and takes his hand. Her fingers are cold from the night air, but her grip is steady. Thank you, she says, for not giving up, for caring when you don't have to. Kael wants to say he doesn't care that this is still just a Guillaume, but the lie won't come. He does care. Against all his instincts, against 3 years of carefully maintained distance, he's let these people, this woman and her brother and this impossible dragon, matter to him. We should get some rest, he says instead. Long day tomorrow. But neither of them moves. They stand there hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead and pretending not to notice how right it feels. Morning brings unexpected visitors. Kael is checking Saren's wing when the dragon's head snaps up, nostrils flaring. Men. 5. Coming fast. Hide, Kael tells Liana. Now. But even as he draws his sword, he knows something's different. These aren't hunters moving with stealth. These are soldiers marching with purpose. They appear at the cave entrance minutes later, 5 men in dark armor bearing the serpent seal of Counselor Darius. But the man at their front makes Kael's blood run cold. Marcus, his former squad mate, his friend. Hello, Kael. Marcus says, his face carefully neutral. It's been a long time. Kael doesn't lower his sword. Not long enough. What do you want, Marcus? To talk. Just talk. Marcus holds up his empty hands. Can we do that, for old time's sake? Through the bond, Kael feels Saren's tension, her readiness to fight despite her injuries. He sends her a wave of cautious patience. Talk, Kael says, but your men stay outside. Marcus nods and steps into the cave alone. His eyes take in everything that supplies the makeshift camp and finally Saren. So it's true, Marcus says quietly. You bonded again. I wasn't sure I believed it when the scout reported back. The scout who ran away. You mean the coward who left his friends to join? The smart man who knew when he was outmatched. Marcus's gaze shifts to Liana, who's emerged from the shadows. And you must be the scholar. Liana Morse, daughter of Heinrich Morse, the dragon historian. What do you want? Liana asks, her voice steady despite the fear Kael can see in her eyes. To give you a warning. Marcus looks back at Kael. Counselor Darius knows about the dragon, knows you bonded with it, and he's not going to let live Kael. He can't. Why, Kael demands. What's so threatening about one injured dragon? Marcus is silent for a long moment. Then he sighs. How much do you know about what really happened at Crimson Vale? I know my dragon died. She died because Darius ordered it. Ordered all the dragons in that sector killed. He claimed they were becoming too independent, too dangerous. But the truth, Marcus runs a hand through his hair. The truth is he's terrified of what dragons represent, of the bond between rider and dragon. Because bonded dragons can't be controlled by the council. They answer only to their riders. Kael feels the pieces clicking into place. He's been systematically eliminating dragons. Not just wild ones, bonded ones too. For the past 5 years, always making it look like accidents or battles or natural deaths. But yes, Marcus's voice is heavy with guilt. And I've been helping him, following orders. Because that's what soldiers do, right? We follow orders. Until you can't live with yourself anymore. Kael says, is that why you're here, guilty conscience? I'm here because you were my friend, because I owe you at least this much warning. Marcus glances at Saren again. That dragon can't stay here. Darius has a full company of hunters on the way. They'll be here by tomorrow, maybe sooner. You need to run. Get as far away as possible. I'm not running. Don't be stupid, Kael. You can't fight a full company. Not alone. Not with an injured dragon and a civilian to protect. Then I'll figure something out. Marcus steps closer, urgent now. Listen to me. Darius isn't just afraid of dragons. He's afraid of what happened 3 years ago, of riders questioning the orders, of dragons choosing their riders over the council. Ashara died because she wouldn't let you follow an order that would have killed civilians. Did you know that? Kael goes very still. What? The order at Crimson Vale. You were supposed to burn that village. Women, children, everyone. Because Darius thought they were harboring rebels. But you hesitated and Ashara refused to do it. So Darius had her targeted, made sure she wouldn't survive the battle. The world seems to tilt. All this time, Kael thought his hesitation killed Ashara. But the truth is worse. His moment of humanity is what made her a target. You're lying, he says, but his voice lacks conviction. I wish I was, but I was there, Kael. I saw the order, saw the designated marksman waiting for their shot. Marcus's face is anguished. I didn't understand until after. Didn't piece it together until I started seeing the pattern with other riders. Anyone who showed too much independence, too much loyalty to their dragon over the council, accidents happened. Liana's voice cuts through. How many riders has he killed? Dozens over the years. Marcus looks at her, and he'll kill more. Starting with you two, if you don't run. Saren growls low and dangerous. Through the parliament, Kael feels her rage not at Marcus but at the injustice, at the senseless waste of life. We fight, she sends. Can't run forever. She's right, Kael says. Running just means he picks us off later. At least here we have defensible position. You have a cave and 1 sword against 50 trained killers. Then even the odds. Kael meets Marcus's eyes. Help us. Make up for all those times you followed orders instead of doing what was right. Marcus looks torn, genuinely conflicted. I can't. Yes, you can. You said it yourself, you owe me. So pay your debt. Help us stop Darius before he kills every dragon left in this world. If I betray the council, I'm a dead man. And if you don't, you're a coward who'll spend the rest of his life knowing he could have stopped a genocide. Kael's voice softened slightly. You were my friend once, Marcus. Be that person again, just for one day. For a long, tense moment, Marcus says nothing. Then he lets out a long breath. All right, but not because I think we can win, because I'm tired of being the person who looks away. He turns to his men outside. Back to camp, tell Darius we found nothing. The lead was false. The soldiers exchange glances, but obey, disappearing down the mountain trail. Marcus turns back to Kael. That buys us maybe 12 hours before he sends the full force. Not much time to plan a miracle. Then we better get started, Kael says. They spend the next hours planning arguing and planning some more. Marcus sketches out the layout of Darius's forces, 50 hunters, well-armed and experienced. They'll surround the cave, cut off all escape routes, then use smoke and fire to flush out the occupants. Standard siege tactics, Marcus explains. No honor, no fair fight, just overwhelming force. What if we don't give them a target, Liana suggests? What if we're not in the cave when they arrive? They'll track us. Darius has the best trackers in the kingdom. Not if we go somewhere they can't follow. Liana pulls out her journal, flipping to a sketch. I've been researching the mountain. There's an old passage dates back centuries from before the last Dragon Wars. It runs through the heart of Dragon's Peak, emerges on the far side near the Whispering Canyon. Marcus studies the sketch. That's over 100 miles of unmapped caverns. People have died trying to navigate those passages. People who didn't have a dragon, Liana counters. Dragons have an innate sense of direction. They can navigate through darkness, through complex cave systems. Saren could guide us. Kael looks at the young dragon. Can you do that? With your wing, Saren shifts, testing the splinted wing. It's healing but still far from functional. Walking is one thing. Navigating treacherous underground passages is another. Try. We'll try. It's risky, Marcus says. But it might work. The passages are too narrow for a full company. They'd have to split into smaller groups, which gives you a fighting chance. And on the other side, Kael asks, what then? Whispering Canyon is neutral territory. Old treaties prevent any council forces from operating there. Marcus smiles grimly. Of course, Darius has been violating treaties for years, but it at least puts more distance between you and his hunters. They continue planning late into the afternoon. Marcus shares everything he knows about Darius's operations, his resources, his blind spots. It's like watching a man exorcise demons one confession at a time. Finally, Liana pulls Kael aside. We still don't have a solution for Finn, she says quietly. Even if we survive this, even if we reach the other side. Without Dragon's breath, my brother dies. Kael has been trying not to think about that. I know. I've been thinking. If it comes down to it, if there's no other way, I want you to know that I won't ask Saren to sacrifice herself. I can't. Liana. No, listen, Finn wouldn't want someone else to die for him. He's too good for that. Too kind. Tears shine in her eyes. If we can't find another solution then at least I'll know I tried. And I'll have these days, these moments where I mattered enough to someone that they risked everything to help me. Kael takes her hands. Don't talk like it's over. We still have time. Something might... Kael, her voice is gentle. I know what hope sounds like when it's lying to itself. I've been doing it for 3 months. He wants to argue, wants to promise her that everything will work out. But he's done lying to people he cares about. If I think of something, he says instead, if there's any possibility of saving both of them, I'll take it, no matter the cost. Even if the cost is you. Even then. Liana looks at him for a long moment. Then, surprising them both, she leans forward and kisses him. It's brief, soft tasting of salt and desperation and something that might be goodbye. When she pulls back, her smile is sad. Thank you for giving me something to hope for, even if it's impossible. She walks away before Kael can respond, leaving him standing there with the ghost of her lips still warm against his. They leave at dusk, just as the sun bleeds red across the mountain peaks. Marcus leads them to the passage entrance, a narrow cleft hidden behind a rockfall that looks completely natural. You'd never find it unless you knew exactly where to look. This is where we part ways, Marcus says. I'll head back, tell Darius you gave me the slip. Lead the hunters away from this area. You'll be killed when he realizes you helped us, Kael says. Probably, but at least I'll die doing something that matters. Marcus holds out his hand. Good luck, old friend. Kael clasps it. Thank you for choosing the right side. Should have done it 3 years ago. Maybe Ashara would still be... Marcus stops, shakes his head. Take care of yourself. And that dragon. He disappears into the gathering darkness, a ghost seeking redemption. The passage entrance is barely wide enough for Saren to squeeze through. Inside, it's pitch black, the kind of absolute darkness that makes you forget what light looks like. Kael lights a torch, but its flickering glow barely pushes back the shadows. This way, Saren sends. Can feel the path. They move in single file, Saren in front, then Kael, then Lyanna. The passage twists and turns, sometimes widening into vast caverns where their footsteps echo like whispers, sometimes narrowing until they're forced to crawl on hands and knees. Hours pass, or maybe minutes. Time loses meaning in the darkness. Stop, Lyanna says suddenly. Look. She's pointing at the cave wall where ancient drawings cover the stone. Dragons, dozens of them rendered in ochre and charcoal, and among them human figures standing with hands raised not in defense but in greeting. This is old, Lyanna breathes, centuries old, from before the Dragon Wars, before the Council, before. She traces one of the drawings reverently. This shows something I've only read about in fragments. The first bond. When humans and dragons weren't master and servant, or rider and mount. They were equals, partners. Kael studies the drawings. The humans and dragons are drawn the same size eye to eye. There's no hierarchy, no domination, just cooperation. What happened, he asks. Why did it change? Fear. The council formed because some humans were afraid of dragon power. They created rule structures, ways to control the bond, to make sure dragons served human interests rather than being free partners. Lyanna's voice is bitter. And eventually the fear won, turned into genocide. Through the bond, Kael feels Saren's sadness. The young dragon has stopped before the drawings, her head bowed. Remember. We remember. The words carry weight beyond their simplicity. Dragons remember. They carry the history of their kind through generations, through bonds that transcend individual lifetimes. Every dragon that ever lived, every bond that ever formed somewhere in their collective memory, it still exists, including Ashura. The realization hits Kael like a physical blow. When Saren bonded with him, she didn't just connect to him. She connected to his memories of Ashura, to everything they were together. She's here, Saren confirms. In me. In you. Never truly gone. Kael's knees weaken. He sits down hard, his back against the cave wall, and for the first time since Crimson Veil, he lets himself really grieve. Not the sharp, violent grief that woke him from nightmares, but something deeper, softer. The kind of grief that acknowledges loss while also honoring what was. Lyanna sits beside him, not speaking, just present. Her hand finds his in the darkness, and they sit like that while Saren stands guard, keeping watch over two broken humans, trying to piece themselves back together. They emerge from the passages 3 days later, exhausted and filthy, but alive. The Whispering Canyon lives up to its name. Wind howls through the rock formations, creating sounds that almost resemble voices. It's an eerie, unsettling place, but it's also beautiful. Red stone towers rise hundreds of feet, carved into impossible shapes by millennia of wind and water. We made it, Lyanna says, disbelieving. We actually made it. But there's no time to celebrate. Saren suddenly goes rigid, her head snapping toward the canyon entrance. Danger. Coming. Many, Kael curses. They found us. Marcus must have... No. Lyanna is looking at something in the distance. Look. Those aren't Darius's hunters. She's right. The figures approaching are different, maybe 20 riders, but not in council armor. They wear the mixed leathers and furs of independent clans, and leading them is a woman with gray-streaked hair and a crossbow slung across her back. The woman stops 50 feet away. Kael Theron, Lyanna Morse, and a young dragon who should be dead. Her voice is hard-weathered. We've been tracking you for days. Who are you? Kael demands. Name's Vara. I run an organization of people with a shared interest. People who've lost dragons to Darius's purges. People who are tired of sitting quiet while the council commits genocide. She nods at Saren. That dragon is evidence. Proof that Darius has been lying about dragon populations, about threats, about everything. We want to help you keep it alive. Why should we trust you, Lyanna asks. Because we're the only allies you have left. Vara dismounts, moving slowly with her hands visible. Darius has hunters combing these canyons. He's offering a fortune for your heads. You won't survive alone. Kael studies her face, searching for deception. But all he sees is weary determination. "What do you want in return?" he asks. "Help us expose Darius. Show the kingdom what he's done. Prove that dragons aren't the threat he is." Vera glances at Saren, and maybe if we're very lucky, start rebuilding what was lost. The real bond, the equal partnership. It's a dangerous proposition, trusting strangers, going up against the council directly. But looking at Lyanna's exhausted face at Saren's healing wounds, and Kael knows they can't run forever. "All right," he says, "but first we need your help with something else, something urgent." He explains about Finn, about the curse, about their desperate need for dragon's breath. Vera listens carefully. When he's finished, she's quiet for a long moment. "Dragon's breath requiring sacrifice," she finally says. "That's what all the texts say. But there might be another way. Something old, something that predates the Council's control of dragon lore." "What?" Lyanna asks, hopeful and afraid in equal measure. "The first bond ritual. If a Dresden and Rider bond completely, and I mean completely past the normal Rider-dragon connection, they can share life force. Not take it, share it. The dragon gives without dying, and the Rider receives without destroying." How Kael demands. "You already have the beginning with Saren, but you need to go deeper. Let go of fear, of control, of every wall you've built. Become truly one being in two bodies." Vera looks at them seriously. "It's dangerous. The ritual can break minds if done wrong, can kill if done poorly, but it's the only way to get what you need without sacrifice." Saren pushes her head against Kael's chest. Through the bond, he feels her certainty. "Tritaninditi." For Finn, for family. "How long do we have?" Kael asks. Vera checks the sun. "Darius's hunters will be here by nightfall. So if you're going to do this, you need to start now, and hope to all the gods that it works." Kael looks at Lyanna, sees the hope and terror warring in her eyes. This is it, their one chance to save Finn without losing Saren, or to lose everything trying. "Let's do it," he says. And with those words, their fate is sealed. The ritual begins as the sun touches the western horizon. Vara's people form a protective circle around them, weapons ready. Inside the circle, Kael sits facing Saren, their foreheads pressed together. "Close your eyes," Vera instructs. "Clear your mind of everything except the bond. No fear, no doubt, just trust." It sounds simple. It's not. The moment Kael tries to let go completely, his mind floods with images. Ashara dying, villages burning. Every failure, every loss, every moment he wasn't enough. "Let go," Saren urges. "I'm here. You're safe." But how can he be safe? How can he trust completely when trust has only ever led to loss, Kael? Lyanna's voice close. She's kneeling beside them. "You told me Ashara didn't die because you hesitated. She died protecting you because she trusted you'd make the right choice eventually. So make it now. Choose to trust. Choose to be worthy of what she saw in you." The words cut through his spiral. Kael opens his eyes and looks at Saren, this young dragon who lost everything and still chose to bond with him, who fought despite her injuries, who leads them through darkness without hesitation. She already trusts him completely. It's time he returned the favor. Kael closes his eyes again and lets go. Not gradually, not carefully, he just releases every wall, every defense, every carefully maintained distance. The bond explodes open and suddenly he's not Kael anymore. He's flying wings cutting through cloud sky, endless above, nestled against mother's warmth, siblings chirping softly, fire beneath, skin building, ready to protect those we love, grief, sharp as teeth when they fall, when mother falls, when everyone falls, hope, like sunlight when he appears, when Kael appears, when Pack returns. Saren's entire life, entire being floods through him, and in return she receives his memories, all his pain, his guilt, his fierce determination to never fail again. They merge, not physically but in every way that matters. One consciousness, one heart. And in that unity, Kael feels it life force essence, whatever name you give it, not taking from Saren but pulling from both of them, from their combined strength. A gift freely given from both to another. He opens his eyes, both sets of eyes, human and dragon, simultaneously. Reaches out both hands and claws moving in concert. And between them something manifests. Pure light, neither fire nor magic, but something essential. Dragon's breath. True dragon's breath. Vara is there with a crystal vial capturing the essence. That's enough. Pull back before you burn yourselves out. But pulling back is like ripping apart. When they finally separate, Kael collapses gasping. Every nerve ending feels raw, exposed. Saren fares better, but even she is trembling with exhaustion. Liana catches him before he hits the ground. Did it work? Kael, did it work? He can barely speak, but he nods. Vara holds up the vial. Inside, the light swirls golden and pure and alive. It worked, the older woman confirms. Now we just need to get it to your brother. Fast. They ride through the night, Vara's people forming an escort. Twice they spot Darius's hunters in the distance. Twice Vara's riders peel off to lead them away, buying time with their lives. Kael rides in a daze, still feeling the echoes of the bond merge. Saren runs alongside his horse, moving better. Now her wing splint loose, the deep connection has somehow accelerated her healing. Together she keeps sending. Stronger together. And it's true, Kael can feel it. The bond between them is different now, deeper, more complete. He knows her thoughts without asking. She anticipates his needs before he voices them. They're not rider and mount. They're something the world hasn't seen in centuries. True partners. Kael, Liana's voice breaks through his thoughts. Thank you for risking everything, for, her voice catches, for caring about Finn when you didn't have to. I care about you, he says simply. Both of you. You're pack now. The word comes naturally borrowed from Saren's consciousness. Pack, family, the ones you protect no matter what. They reach the city at dawn, riding hard through gates just opening for morning trade. Citizens scatter as they thunder through streets, a strange procession of warriors and one determined woman clutching a vial of light. The boarding house is shabby paint peeling, but Liana hits the door to run. Finn, Mrs. Aldrich. The landlady appears, her face grave. Oh, child, I'm so glad you're back. He's upstairs. It's bad. They take the stairs, 3 at a time. The room at the top is dim curtains drawn, and in the bed, Finn is almost completely stone now. Gray has consumed his torso, his neck creeping up his shipball. Only his eyes remain fully alive, tracking their entrance with desperate hope. Finn! Liana is at his side instantly. I'm here, we have it. The boy's mouth moves, but no sound comes out. His throat is too far gone. Quick, Vera says. The essence must be administered directly. On the tongue, if possible. Liana unstoppers the vial with shaking hands. The light within pulses like a heartbeat. She tips Finn's head back, parts his stiff lips, and lets a single drop fall. The effect is instantaneous. Light explodes from Finn's mouth, racing through his body like lightning through storm clouds. Everywhere it touches stone, fractures, cracks, falls away like a shed skin. Color returns. Movement returns. Life returns. Finn gasps his first real breath in weeks. Liana. I'm here, and she's sobbing now, clutching her brother's hand as it transforms from stone back to flesh. I'm here, you're okay. You're going to be okay. Kael watches from the doorway, Saren's head resting against his shoulder. Through the bond, he feels her joy, pure and complicated happiness at a family reunited. This is what we fight for, he realizes. Not glory, not revenge, just this people we love staying alive. Vara steps beside him. That was just one curse broken, but there are more. Darius has been poisoning this kingdom for years. Are you ready to help me break the rest? Kael looks at her, at Liana and Finn embracing, at Saren who survived impossible odds, at Marcus's sacrifice and all the dragons who died for a council's fear. Yes, he says, but not tonight. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow, he smiles grimly, tomorrow we start a revolution. They rest for 3 days. Finn recovers with remarkable speed, the dragon's breath having not just broken the curse but healed damage Liana didn't even know existed. On the 2nd day he's walking. On the 3rd he's reading again, devouring every text about dragons that Liana has accumulated over the years. It's strange, Finn says, sitting by the window with an ancient manuscript. I can feel them now. The dragons. Not see them, but sense them. Like echoes in the back of my mind. Kael looks up from where he's sharpening his sword. What do you mean, when the dragon's breath cured me, it left something behind? A connection. Finn closes his eyes. There's Saren, of course. She's bright like sunlight, but there are others too. Distant, frightened, hiding. Through the bond, Kael feels Saren's sudden attention. He speaks true, can feel the scattered ones, the survivors. How many? Liana asks, moving to her brother's side. I don't know, maybe a dozen, maybe more. They're scattered across the kingdom, hiding in remote places, but they're there. Finn opens his eyes and Kael is struck by how much older the boy looks now. The curse aged him in ways that have nothing to do with time. And they're all terrified of the same thing, the serpent. Darius, Kael says. No. Finn shakes his head. The serpent is older than Darius. I don't know how to explain it. It's like a wound in the dragon consciousness. Something that happened generations ago that they still remember and fear. Vera, who's been leaning against the far wall, speaks up. The first betrayal, that's what you're sensing. Everyone turns to look at her. It's ancient history, Vera continues. Back when the bonds were still equal partnerships, there was a rider named Corvus. He and his dragon Noctis were legendary, the strongest bond anyone had ever seen. But Corvus became obsessed with power, wanted to use his bond to control other dragons to build an empire. Noctis refused, and in his rage, Corvus tried to force the bond, tried to dominate his dragon's will. What happened? Liana asks. Noctis broke the bond, chose to sever it rather than be enslaved. It nearly killed them both. But Corvus survived, and he was changed, broken. He founded what would eventually become the council, built on the principle that dragons must be controlled, must be tools rather than partners. Because if you can't trust your dragon not to abandon you, better to never truly bond at all. Kael feels something click into place. And Darius is following that same path, trying to eliminate any dragon that might choose its rider over the council. Worse, Vara says. I think Darius is Corvus's descendant. I think he carries that same fear, that same need for control. And I think he'll never stop until every dragon is either dead or completely subjugated. The room falls silent. Finally, Finn speaks. Then we have to stop him. Not just for the dragons we know about, but for all of them. For every future bond that might form. Finn, no. Liana's voice is sharp. You just recovered. You're not getting involved in... I'm already involved, Liana. The dragon's breath connected me to them. I can sense dragons, can maybe even communicate with them if I learn how. That makes me valuable. That makes me someone who can help. You're 15 years old, and you're 25, and you crossed hostile territory alone to find a cure. Did age stop you? Liana opens her mouth to argue, then closes it. Finn has her there. Kael watches the exchange with something that might be admiration. The kid has spine. Reminds him of Liana, that same stubborn determination to do what's right regardless of the risk. Like you, Serene observes through the boss. Pack protects pack. All right, Kael says. If Finn can sense dragons, that's useful. But he stays back from any actual fighting. Agreed, Finn nods eagerly. Liana looks less convinced but doesn't argue further. Good, Vera says. Because as of this morning, Darius knows where you are. My scouts report a full company of council guards is en route. They'll be here by tomorrow evening. Then we don't wait for them to come to us, Kael says. We take the fight to Darius. End this before more people die. Suicide, Vera says bluntly. The council chambers are in the heart of the capital. Heavily guarded, you'd never get close. What if we had an insider? All eyes turn to Finn. The boy is leaning forward, animated. Marcus helped you before, right? What if there are others, council guards, who are tired of following orders they know are wrong? Marcus is probably dead by now, Kael says quietly. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe he planted seeds before he fell. Maybe there are others ready to defect if they see a real alternative. It's a long shot, but looking around the room at Liana's determined face, at Saren's steady presence, at Vara's weathered resolve, Kael realizes long shots are all they've ever had. We need information, he decides. Floor plans of the council chambers, guard rotations, Darius's schedule. And we need to know who among the guards might be sympathetic to our cause. I can get that, Vera says. I have contacts in the capital. Give me 2 days. We don't have 2 days. Then we move fast and hope luck is on our side. Vara straightens. There's a council session tomorrow afternoon. Public petition day. Anyone can attend, though. You'll be searched for weapons at the door. What good does attending do if we're unarmed? Liana asks. Well, Kael looks at Saren. Through the bond, an idea forms dangerous, audacious, completely insane. We don't need weapons, he says slowly. We have something better. We have proof. The plan comes together over the next hours. They'll attend the council session as petitioners requesting an audience to discuss agricultural concerns in the Northern Territories. It's boring enough that no one will pay attention until it's too late. Meanwhile, Vara's people will position themselves around the council building. Not to attack, that would just get them all killed, but to bear witness, to spread the word of what happens inside. The council's power is built on secrecy, Vara explains, on people not knowing what really goes on behind closed doors. We break them. The hardest part is convincing Saren to hide. The young dragon will have to remain outside the city, waiting for Kael's signal. Going into the council chambers with a dragon would be suicide. Don't like it, Saren says stubbornly. Should stay together. I know, but I need you safe. I need to know that if this goes wrong, you'll survive. Kael rests his forehead against hers. Can you do that for me? Can you trust me to come back? The irony isn't lost on either of them. 3 weeks ago, Kael couldn't trust himself to bond. Now he's asking Saren to trust him completely. Always, Saren finally sends. Pack protects pack, even when apart. That night, Kael can't sleep. He stands on the boarding house roof, watching the city lights below. Somewhere out there, Darius is preparing. And tomorrow they'll stand face to face. You're thinking too much. He turns to find Liana climbing through the roof access, 2 cups of tea in her hands. She offers him one. Can't help it, he says. Tomorrow we're gambling everything on a plan held together with hope and desperation. So, a typical Tuesday for us. She sips her tea. 3 weeks ago I thought I'd lost everything. Thought Finn was dying and there was nothing I could do. Then you showed up. You hired me. I just did the job. No, Liana shakes her head. You did so much more than that. You bonded with Saren when you swore you'd never bond again. You trusted Marcus when every instinct told you not to. You risked everything to save my brother, and you didn't have to. Yes, I did, because somewhere along the way you stopped being a client. You became, he struggles for the word, pack, Liana suggests with a small smile. Yeah, pack. They stand in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Finally, Liana speaks again. If tomorrow goes wrong, if things don't work out the way we hope, I want you to know something. These past weeks have been the hardest of my life, but they have also been the most important, because they reminded me what it means to not be alone, to have people who fight alongside you instead of watching you struggle. Kael sets down his tea and takes her hand. Tomorrow's not going to go wrong. We're going to walk in there that expose Darius for what he is and walk back out. Together. You don't know that. No, but I choose to believe it. Isn't that what faith is, choosing to believe even when you can't know for sure? Liana laughs softly, using my own words against me. That's fighting dirty. I learned from the best. She leans against him, her head resting on his shoulder. And for a moment, the world narrows to just this, 2 people finding comfort in each other while chaos gathers at the edges. Kael, her voice is quiet. If we survive this, what happens next? What do you mean, Fabienne? I mean with us, with you and me, with Saren and Finn, and this whole impossible situation we found ourselves in. Kael considers. A month ago, he would have said he'd walk away, collect his pay, and disappear. But that was a different Kael, one who thought isolation was safety, who believed distance prevented pain. I think we figure it out together, he says. Build something new. Maybe start training other riders, other dragons in the old ways. The equal bond. A school for dragons. Why not someone has to remember what was lost? Might as well be us. Liana tilts her head up and her eyes are bright with unshed tears. That sounds perfect. He kisses her, then properly this time. Not the desperate goodbye from before, but something deeper. A promise, a beginning. When they finally pull apart, Liana is smiling. Well, that's a good reason to survive tomorrow. The best reason? Kael agrees. They stay on the roof until dawn begins to paint the eastern sky, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for a future that might never come. And somehow that makes it feel real, worth fighting for. The council chambers are exactly as imposing as Cahill expected. White marble columns rise 3 stories high. Intricate carvings depict the kingdom's history, and notably every scene shows humans dominating dragons, controlling them, using them as tools. There's not a single image of partnership or equality. They're searched at the entrance. Guards confiscate Kael's sword and daggers with professional efficiency, but they miss the small vial Leon has sewn into her dress lining, the remaining dragon's breath carefully preserved. Petitioners wait in the gallery, a guard instructs. You'll be called when the council is ready to hear you. The gallery overlooks the main chamber. From here, Kael can see the 5 council seats arranged in a semicircle. 4 are already occupied by stern-faced men and women. The center seat, the highest and most ornate, remains empty. That one belongs to Darius. There are a lot of people here, Finn whispers. The boy is trying to look calm, but his hands shake slightly. What if they don't believe us? Then we make them believe, Liana says firmly. The chamber fills over the next hour. Citizens with various petitions, merchants seeking trade agreements, nobles lobbying for favors. It's all very orderly, very civilized. The perfect facade of a functioning government. Then Darius enters, and the temperature seems to drop. He's not what Kael expected. Older, certainly maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp features. But there's nothing overtly villainous about him. He looks like any other bureaucrat, tired and overworked. It's his eyes that give it away. Cold. Calculating. The eyes of someone who's made hard decisions and sleeps fine anyway. Darius takes his seat and the session begins. Petition after petition is heard and dismissed. The council maintains perfect decorum, but Kael can see the pattern. Anyone who questions, who pushes back, who asks uncomfortable questions, they're smoothly redirected, promise future considerations, sent away with nothing. Control. It's all about control. Finally, Kael Theron, Liana Morse, and Finn Morse, approaching with concerns about northern agricultural practices. They descend to the chamber floor. Kael is acutely aware of the guards stationed around the room, of the high windows where archers might be positioned, of every exit and potential weapon. But he keeps his expression neutral as they approach the council seats. Counselor Darius, Liana begins, her voice steady. We appreciate you hearing our petition, though I must admit we haven't been entirely truthful about our reasons for being here. The chamber goes silent. Darius leans forward slightly. Go on, he says. We're here to talk about dragons, specifically about the systematic genocide you've been conducting for the past 5 years. The reaction is immediate. Guards move closer. Council members exchange alarmed glances. Citizens in the gallery murmur in shock. But Darius's expression doesn't change. That's quite an accusation. Do you have proof? We have a survivor, Kael says. A young dragon named Saren, who lived through the massacre at Dragon's Peak. She bears your mark, Counselor, your seal branded into her scales. Dragon's Peak was cleared of dangerous, wild dragons threatening nearby settlements. Standard procedure. 20 dragons, most of them sleeping, mothers protecting their young. Kael's voice is hard. That's not standard procedure. That's execution. And you would know about dragons, wouldn't you, Theron? Darius's voice takes on an edge. Former dragon rider, bonded with Ashara of the Copper Flight, until she died under your command at Crimson Vale. The words are calculated to wound, and they do. But Kael has had 3 weeks to process his grief, to understand what really happened. She died because you ordered her killed, Kael says clearly. Because she refused an order to burn civilians. Because she represented everything you fear a dragon who couldn't be controlled. You're delusional. Am I? Then why did you have Marcus execute the order? Why did you position marksmen specifically to target bonded riders who showed too much independence? For the first time, something flickers in Darius's eyes. Uncertainty. Marcus is dead, Darius says. Killed in the line of duty. There's no one to corroborate your fantasy. That's where you're wrong. The voice comes from the gallery entrance. Everyone turns. Marcus walks in, limping heavily, one arm in a sling. But he's alive. Battered, bloody, but alive. "Hello, counselor," Marcus says. "Sorry to disappoint." The chamber erupts in chaos. "I have records," Marcus announces, pulling a leather folder from his jacket. "Kill orders, falsified reports. Evidence of every dragon execution you've ordered over the past 5 years. Names, dates, locations." "This is treason," one of the other council members sputters. "You can't what? Tell the truth or I am." Marcus moves down to the chamber floor, ignoring his injuries. "I spent 3 years following orders I knew were wrong, telling myself I was serving the kingdom, but all I was doing was serving one man's paranoia." Darius's facade finally cracks. He stands, and there's something dangerous in his posture now. "You don't understand. None of you understand. Dragons are too powerful, too unpredictable. The bonds make riders loyal to their dragons, first the kingdom second. That's dangerous." "So you decided to eliminate them?" Liana demands. "To commit genocide because you're afraid?" "I decided to prevent another war, to stop what happened with—" Darius stops himself, but too late. "With Corvus," Finn says quietly. Everyone turns to the boy. "That's what this is really about, isn't it? Your ancestor Corvus the betrayed. You carry his fear, his obsession with control. You don't know anything about it." But Darius's voice wavers. "I know what Noctis remembered," Finn says. "Through the dragon's breath, through my connection to their collective memory. I know that Corvus tried to enslave his dragon. And I know that when Noctis broke the bond, it destroyed them both. Corvus survived, but he was never whole again. And neither was Noctis." "That dragon abandoned its rider," Darius shouts, and now the raw emotion breaks through. "Left him broken, powerless, alone. That's what dragons do. They use you, bond with you, make you dependent, and then they leave. Better to control them, to keep them subjugated, than to risk that kind of betrayal." "Noctis didn't abandon Corvus," Kael says. "He refused to be enslaved. There's a difference." "Is there, when the result is the same, when you're left with nothing but memories and pain?" Darius looks directly at Kael now. "You know what it's like. To lose your dragon. To wake up every day and feel that absence like a missing limb. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me it wouldn't be better to never bond at all than to go through that again." And here it is. The core of Darius's fear laid bare. He's not just Corvus's descendant. He's a rider who lost his dragon. "When did it happen?" Kael asks quietly. Darius is silent for a long moment. Then, as if a dam breaks, 20 years ago. "I was young, ambitious. I bonded with a dragon named Strix, a beautiful black dragon with silver eyes. The bond was everything they said it would be. Complete. Perfect. And then what? Then I wanted more. Wanted to use our bond to gain political power, to rise through the ranks. Strix felt my ambition through the bond, felt how I was using our connection for personal gain rather than true partnership. And she severed it, chose to break the bond rather than be part of my schemes. The admission hangs in the air. It nearly killed me." Darius continues, his voice hollow. "The severing. For weeks I wished it had. And when I recovered, I swore no rider would ever have that kind of power over me again. No dragon would be allowed to make that choice. So I built a system where dragons were tools controlled and contained, where bonds were shallow enough that breaking them wouldn't destroy anyone." "But that's not really a bond," Liana says gently. "That's just slavery with extra steps. It's survival. It's preventing the kind of pain that comes from trusting something that can leave." "So instead you inflict a different kind of pain," Kael says. "You kill dragons before they can bond. You murder riders who get too close to their partners. You create the very thing you fear, a world where trust is impossible." Darius slumps back into his seat. For the first time, he looks old, tired. "What would you have me do?" he asks. "Apologize, undo 20 years of policy, bring back the dead?" "Yes," Kael says simply, "to all of it, starting with a public admission of what you've done. Let the kingdom know the truth." "They'll tear me apart." "Maybe, but at least you'll die honest instead of living as a monster." The silence stretches. Then from the gallery, someone shouts, "Let the dragons speak for themselves." Others take up the cry. "Bring the dragon. Let us see." Kael meets Lyanna's eyes. This wasn't part of the plan. Bringing Saren into the council chambers is dangerous. But looking at the crowd at their faces hungry for truth, he realizes it's the only way. He reaches out through the bond. Saren, we need you. The response is immediate. Coming. Fast. 3 minutes later, the massive doors at the chamber entrance blow inward. Saren strides in wings spread wide despite her healing injuries, and she is magnificent. Pearl scales catch the light from 100 angles. Golden eyes sweep the crowd with fierce intelligence. She is barely more than a hatchling, but in this moment she looks ancient and powerful. Guards raise crossbows. Saren doesn't even flinch. She walks straight to Kael's side and sits radiating calm authority. I am here, she sends, and somehow everyone in the chamber feels it. Not words exactly, more like understanding that bypasses language entirely. Darius stares at her, and in his eyes, Kael sees something unexpected. Longing. You bonded again, Darius whispers. After losing Ashara, you bonded again. How do you trust like that after losing everything? Because the alternative is worse, Kael says. Living in fear, living alone, that's not surviving. That's just a slower kind of death. I'd rather risk pain than guarantee emptiness. Saren moves closer to Darius. The counselor flinches back, but the dragon is gentle. She extends her neck, lowering her head to his eye level. You were bonded once, she sends, and again everyone feels it. Strix still lives, in the northern wastes, alone, grieving, waiting. Darius's face crumples. She's alive. Yin. Waiting, hoping you learned, hoping you changed. I can't, after what I've done, she'd never, dragons forgive. If human, willing to change, willing to grow, are you? It's the question at the heart of everything. Can people change? Can bonds be rebuilt after trust is broken? Kael doesn't know if Darius deserves forgiveness, but he knows that without the possibility of redemption, they are all just trapped in cycles of pain and revenge. If you want forgiveness, Kael says, you start by telling the truth. All of it. Publicly. Darius looks at him, then at Serene, then at the crowd of citizens watching with held breath. Finally, he nods. All right, he says hoarsely. All right, I'll confess. All of it. The truth spills out over the next hours. Darius speaks haltingly at first, then with gathering momentum. He admits to the dragon calls, the murdered writers, the falsified reports. Names Marcus as a reluctant accomplice, acting under orders. Reveals the extent of the conspiracy, dozens of council members complicit, either actively participating or looking the other way. The chamber is in uproar. Citizens shout for justice. Council members try to flee and are blocked by guards who've decided in this moment that truth matters more than orders. Through it all, Saren stands as witness, living proof of what Darius tried to destroy. Finally exhausted, Darius finishes. That's everything, every crime, every death. I accept full responsibility. What happens now? Someone from the gallery calls out. Kael looks at Marcus, at Liana, at Verila, who's appeared at the chamber entrance with her rebels. They've won, but victory feels hollow. Darius will face justice, but the dead are still dead. Now we rebuild, Kael says. We teach the old ways, the equal bond. We find the surviving dragons and offer them partnership, not servitude. We make sure this never happens again. And who decides what's right? Another voice demands. Who stops the dragons from turning on us? It's the same fear that drove Corvus that twisted Darius. The fundamental question, can humans and dragons truly coexist as equals? Finn steps forward, his young voice clear. I can sense dragons. Through the dragon's breath, I'm connected to them. And you know what I feel? They're not angry. They're not plotting revenge. They're just scared and alone and hoping for a chance to be part of something again. The boy speaks truth, Saren sends. We remember the first bonds. Remember what it was to be partners. Not servants, not masters, just together. Slowly, hesitantly, someone in the crowd claps, then another, then more until the chamber rings with applause. It's not a perfect ending. Darius will stand trial. The council will be reformed. Many questions remain unanswered, but it's a beginning. That night, as they leave the chambers, Kael feels something strange through the bond with Saren. A presence, familiar but distant. What is it, he asks. Saren stops walking. Her eyes close and her whole body begins to glow with soft light. Kael feels power building through the bond, Not Saren's power alone, but something older. Something that's been waiting. She's here, Saren sends. She never left. Who? But even as Kael asks, he knows. The light explodes outward from Saren in a corona of copper and pearl. And when it fades, the young dragon is changed. Larger, stronger. Her scales shimmer with two colors, now her original pearl and streaks of copper fire. And in Kael's mind, along with Saren's bright presence, is another consciousness, familiar as his own heartbeat. Hello, my rider, Ashara sends. I told you I would never truly leave. Kael's knees give out. Liana catches him as he sinks to the ground, tears streaming down his face. Ashura, he whispers aloud. When a dragon dies in a true bond, their spirit doesn't vanish. It waits, stays connected to their rider through love and memory. And when that rider bonds again, truly bonds with full trust, and no doubt the two dragons can merge. Become one. Reborn, Saren Ashara. The reborn dragon lowers her head to press against Kael's chest. He can feel both of them now, Saren's fierce youth and Ashara's wise maturity woven together into something new. But I failed you, Kael chokes out. I doubted. You were human, fallible, and I loved you for it, not despite it. My death wasn't your fault, Kael. It was my choice, my gift. And now through Saren, I can give you another gift. A second chance to be the rider I always knew you could be. Liana is crying too, understanding what this means. Finn watches with wonder, and Marcus, leaning heavily against a wall, manages a tired smile. Impossible, he says. I've never heard of a reborn dragon. Because bonds have been shallow for so long, Vara says, appearing beside them. But in the old days, before the council, before Corvus, this was known, this was possible. Complete trust allowing spirits to merge, lives to continue. Kael stands on shaking legs, one hand still pressed to Saren Ashara's scales. He can feel them both distinct, yet united. Two hearts beating as one. We have work to do, Ashara Saren sends. Dragons to find, riders to train, a world to rebuild. Then let's get started, Kael says. 3 months later, the school takes shape in the mountains north of the capital, neutral territory, far from political interference. Buildings rise from stone and timber, designed to house both humans and dragons in equal comfort. Finn is there, of course, working with the few surviving dragons they have located. His gift for sensing and communicating with them proves invaluable. Under his gentle guidance, traumatized dragons slowly remember what it means to trust. Liana runs the academic side, documenting everything, creating texts that teach the old ways. She's pregnant now, barely showing, but glowing with it. She and Kael were married quietly last month in a ceremony where Serene Ashara served as witness. Marcus helps train new riders in combat and survival, teaching hard lessons he learned the costly way. He's still working through guilt, but he's here, trying. That counts for something. Vara oversees recruitment, finding young people willing to commit to the equal bond. It's not easy. Centuries of the council's teaching have made most humans fear dragons as much as Darius did. But slowly candidates emerge. And Darius, he's alive, confined to a simple cell in the capital. But once a month, a black dragon with silver eyes visits him. They don't bond again, maybe they never will. But they talk, and gradually and possibly, they heal. Kael stands on the practice field, watching as a new rider, a girl barely 16, attempts her first flight with a young copper dragon. They're clumsy, uncertain. The dragon dips too low and the girl squeals with terrified laughter. But they're trying. And through his bond with Saren Ashara, Kael can feel their fledgling connection forming. Hesitant, fragile, but real. Thinking deep thoughts, Liana asks, coming to stand beside him. Thinking about how impossible this all is. 3 months ago, dragons were going extinct. Now we're training new riders. 4 months ago, I was alone and desperate, watching my brother die. Now I'm married, pregnant, and building a dragon school. She leans into him. Life changes fast. It does, Kael agrees. He reaches through the bond to Saren Ashara, who's sunning herself on a nearby cliff. You good? Perfect, both voices respond as one. Pack is together. All is well. It's not perfect. There are still people who fear dragons, still politicians who resist the changes. But it's progress. It's hope. That evening, as the sun sets over the mountains, Kael and Liana sit with Finn and Marcus and Vara, sharing a simple meal. Saren Ashara lies nearby, a living reminder of what trust can accomplish. Tell me a story, Finn says suddenly, about the old days, the first bonds. Lyanna opens her mouth to speak, but Kael holds up a hand. No, Webam, he says. No more stories about the past. Let's tell a story about the future instead. About what we're going to build here. So they do. They spin a tale of riders and dragons working together as equals of a world where bonds are freely chosen and freely honored. Where trust isn't foolish, but brave. Where losing and loving and trying again are all just parts of being alive. It's fiction, maybe. A dream. But dreams are where all great things begin. And as the stars emerge overhead and the dragons sing their evening chorus, a sound not heard in the kingdom for decades, Kael allows himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this impossible dream might come true. Not perfectly, not without setbacks and struggles, but genuinely, because that's what the bond teaches. Not perfection, but partnership. Not certainty, but faith. And sometimes that's enough. 5 years later, the first graduating class stands in formation, 50 riders beside 50 dragons. They're young, diverse, drawn from all corners of the kingdom. And every one of them has bonded, truly bonded in the old way. Kael addresses them from a platform, Lyanna at his side. Their daughter Ashra, named one for Ashara, sits on Saren Ashara's back, waving at the crowd. You're not soldiers, Kael tells the graduates. You're not weapons. You're partners with dragons, equals in every way. That means you'll face challenges the old riders never did. You'll have to negotiate, compromise, trust completely. It won't be easy. But it will be worth it, Lyanna adds, because you're not just learning to ride. You're learning to bond, to connect, to build something better than what came before. The ceremony concludes with a flight, 50 dragons taking to the sky in perfect formation, their riders laughing and whooping with joy. It's chaotic and beautiful, and exactly what the founders hoped for. We did it, Marcus says, watching from below. He's grayer now, moving with a cane, but his eyes are bright. We did, Kael agrees. Think it'll last. Think the council will let it continue. The council has no choice. Too many people have seen what's possible now. You can't put that knowledge back in the box. And Darius, have you heard from him? Kael nods. He and Strix rebonded 6 months ago. Apparently, they're working in the northern wastes, finding wild dragons and helping them adjust to this new world. Never thought I'd see that happen. Neither did I, but then 5 years ago, I never thought I'd bond again. Never thought I'd have a family. Never thought any of this was possible. As if summoned by his thoughts, Saren Ashara lands beside them, Ashra giggling on her back. The reborn dragon has grown magnificent, twice the size of a normal dragon, scales of copper and pearl creating impossible patterns. Home she sends, ready for home. Let's go, Kael says, swinging up onto the saddle behind his daughter. Lyanna joins them, settling into the familiar spot against his back. They take off, flying over the school they built over the mountains where this all began, toward the small house they've made their home. Below, the world continues turning. Some people still fear dragons. Some still cling to the old ways of control and subjugation. But more and more are choosing trust, choosing partnership, choosing the harder, better path. And that, Kael thinks as they soar through sunset clouds, is how you change the world. Not through grand gestures or perfect plans, but through small acts of courage repeated over and over until they become the new normal. Through bonds that refuse to break. Through trust that refuses to die. Through hope that refuses to surrender. Pax Saren Ashara sends contentedly. Family Ashara's spirit adds, together, Kael thinks back. Always together.